Hello there. My name is Zachary Elwood, and this is the People Who Read People podcast. This is a podcast about better understanding people, behavior, psychology, delves into a lot of different things. I don't have much of a script on this one, kind of unusual, but I felt it was important to get something out there. Long story short, I did some episodes a while back, a couple months ago, about a guy named Chase Hughes, who, long story short, is just a serial liar. Like, I don't want to psychologically analyze him too much, but I think he's an extreme narcissist. Just a lot of lying in his background about all sorts of things. He used to hawk vitamin supplements deceptively online, claimed to have all these accolades and acclaim in different areas and different realms that there was no evidence he had. His main claim to fame seems to be convincing people that he's an expert in behavior and influence and psychology and government intel, and he's succeeded in getting in all these different basically podcasts, and that's how he basically has convinced people that he's an expert. And then he got on the behavior panel, which, you know, reflects really badly on this behavior panel show, where they basically helped him gain an even bigger audience, you know, without caring to vet him, which, you know, I think that says a lot about what they're about. But anyway, the reason I wanted to make this follow-up is because Chase just had a video get like 2 million views or somewhere around there about this drone, the New Jersey drones. Basically, and we'll watch a little bit of his video, but basically he's stating or implying that this is a Psy-Op by some shadowy government agency, perhaps, and give some reasons for that. But the reason I want to make a video real quick about this is just ties into all of his other kinds of bullshit too. And I'll share my screen now. We'll get into it. Okay, so let's see. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, I realize I just glossed over, you know, a lot of the evidence for Chase's lies. But if you're curious about that, you can check out my episodes about that. Just a lot of evidence that the large majority of people, when they see it, thank me and tell me, well, I can't believe that this guy has succeeded in fooling so many people, basically. I had one person write to thank me because they were thinking of paying Chase $20,000 for Chase's graduate course, so-called graduate course. Just to say, a lot of people have responded positively and have liked to learn that information. So check that out if you have questions. I'm just going to jump into some other more recent things. So yeah, the video in question came out a day ago, and you know, the YouTube algorithm really seems to like Chase Hughes. He's got 1.8 million views on this thing. And I should say too, I mean, sort of like Chase says in here, my goal in doing this video, like Chase says, but I think in a more accurate and responsible way, my goal is to help educate you about people trying to deceive you out there and rile you up for clicks. Now, it's not surprising that a video like this would get a lot of clicks because it is very conspiracy minded and it's about a topical event. So, you know, I think we'll see Chase do more of these kinds of things in the future. And I do think from what I have seen of him lately, he does seem like he's really leaning into the more conspiratorial stuff. And I should say too, this very much relates, his very conspiracy-minded things about this topic very much relate to his other work, because it's in his best interest to exaggerate. This is a video from his screenshots from his old site where he would act as if his amazing stuff could teach you the amazing, how to hypnotize people against their will, how to get psychological compromise of almost any human being you encounter. His page about training beautiful women to be psychological weapons. Just to say, that stuff very much ties into this, you know, idea that he's selling, or is in his best interest to make you believe that there's all these shadowy things going on with the government, because he's talked about like MK Ultra and said all these exaggerated, untrue things about that, about like them being successful, actually successful at, clearly successful at actually brainwashing people and getting them to do things against their will. So just to say that all this stuff plays into his mystique about all the deep, dark things that he might be able to teach you as this sort of guru. And again, I'd recommend checking out 2 of my videos examining this, because it very much ties into neurolinguistic programming. He's basically a neurolinguistic programmer, NLP kind of guy who's embraced military and top secret kind of stuff. So anyway, let's get into this this video, and I actually haven't watched much of this, so we'll watch it together.
Are we in the middle of a psychological operation right now? There are thousands of drone sightings.
Never seen so many UFOs in my life.
And more weird stuff every single day.
Were they human or non-human?
Non-human. We are not alone.
You deserve to know how to tell what the hell is going on. And I just did a very confidential talk to my inner circle last night, but I think that you need to see this.
People within the U.S. government believe it's true.
The world deserves the truth.
Growing number of drone sightings.
They are non-human, higher intelligence.
The unidentified aircraft are the size of cars.
It's like the classic UFO that you would see online.
A lot of people are wondering what the hell is going on. But what about...
Real quick, I want to recommend a movie by Brian Dunning. It's a UFO skeptic movie. The UFO movie they don't want you to see. I'm a big fan of Brian Dunning's work. I haven't actually watched it yet because it came out recently. But if you want something on the more skeptical side, as opposed to just, I think there's a lot of people just embracing the UFO things wholeheartedly and not being that skeptical about all the information out there. So just wanted to throw that in there.
If I told you that the most dangerous thing is happening, but it's inside of your head? If you just think about it for a second, there's decades of silence on UFOs, and now suddenly the government is obsessed with talking about them. I want to show you exactly tonight what the plans and motivations are if this is being done on purpose. And then I want to walk you through a foolproof way on how to spot public manipulation. I'm also maybe going to talk about what to do if it's actually aliens.
I should throw in here too, when I watched a video about the behavior panel, them meeting up. Chase was one of the 4 people who seemed quite into aliens. That's a little backstory. He seemed like very much a believer.
If you don't know, I'm the guy that trains Psy-Ops. I'm the person that teaches this kind of stuff to companies and stuff. So real quick there, if we're learning how to spot deception, you should be skeptical when somebody just uses vague language. He said, I'm the guy who trains Psy-Ops to companies, and let's hear what he said again. I'm the guy that trains Psy-Ops. I'm the guy who trains Psy-Ops. Okay, what have you done? You know, that's actually what stood out to me in the first place when I heard Chase Hughes talk on Jordan Harbinger's podcast. It stood out to me that his backstory just didn't make a lot of sense. You know, usually if somebody's done something impressive in the military or something, they go into a little bit of detail on it. But that doesn't really add up. And as you'll learn if you watch my videos about him, my analysis, he got to start writing a pickup artist book, claiming to be an amazing pickup artist, and then he weaved in the military stuff later because he was in the Navy for 20 years, no evidence that he did anything related to intelligence work, psyops, nothing like that. I didn't think that, this is a supporting piece of evidence, because in interviews he always just glosses over what he's done. He mentions companies here. Notice he didn't mention any military stuff. I'm the person that teaches this kind of stuff to companies and stuff. So
I'm the person who teaches this kind of stuff to companies and stuff. Yeah, very, very vague. So yeah, speaking of how you can
try to use some clues from people who may be trying to fool you and deceive you. These are some good clues.
So the government's kind of gone from decades of denial to throwing around terms like UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, in official hearings.
Real quick, I'm going to be playing the skeptic throughout this. I haven't actually watched this, but to throw some skepticism in there, one reason the government is talking about it more could conceivably just be because in a modern age where there's so much information out there, it's so much harder to keep wraps on stuff. It could have been also that in the past, they didn't want to talk about it that much because they didn't have all the evidence. People weren't communicating as much, so they were more willing to dismiss it and not talk about it. And now they have to talk about it, and there's more pressure to talk about it. So just to say, that's not saying I think that's true. I'm just saying for a lot of these things that Chase talks about in the behavior realm and the influence realm and all sorts of things, there's all sorts of other explanations besides like they really want to talk about it now. They're really into it. Maybe they're pressured to. Maybe there's more transparency because it's harder than ever to keep things under wrap these days, which also plays into what I would say is these more conspiratorial things that Chase is sharing here about maybe it's a psyops is actually related to that because it's harder than ever to keep things under wraps. Like think about how easy it is to leak information, which is actually something I read about for my book, my polarization related book, because I think these really pessimistic and paranoid kinds of narratives that Chase promotes are related to toxic polarization because so many people across the political spectrum, not just left or right, but so many people are quick to reach for these big conspiracies. And the truth is there's just very little evidence of big conspiracies. Like it's really hard to keep big conspiracies of like multiple people under wraps. That's not to say they can't happen, but I'm just saying the bigger it gets, and the easier it is these days to leak information, the harder those things get and the less likely they get. So you just have to use Occam's razor at some point for some of this stuff. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll keep playing.
Add to that this sudden rise in reports of drones all over the place, these weird sightings and emergency declarations that are going on, I think in New Jersey right now. And it feels like we're being prepped for something.
It feels like we're being prepped for something. Yeah, I mean, that is one interpretation. There are many other interpretations. I mean, some people have said that about the UFO reporting in general. The truth is we just don't know yet.
But what are we being prepared for? So,
assuming a lot there. What are we being prepared for? He's just glossed over the fact that maybe that's not true. Okay.
Let's dig in. So why would this be happening right now? So we're going to go both sides. It's aliens. It's not aliens. Let's do both sides here. Most governments don't just usually open up about things like this without a reason.
Yes, and the reason could be that there is increased pressure and transparency to talk about these things. And so they, if there is no big plot to cover anything up, that would help explain that. And they're more willing to talk about it because no one's really trying to withhold information like they may have done in the past. I don't know.
All governments, when they start pushing a narrative, it's most often to serve a bigger agenda if this is deliberate.
Yeah, so, what narrative, though? I have not seen any consistent narrative other than them being more willing to talk about it.
Here are three possible reasons I can think of why this might be happening. Number one, a distraction tactic. When huge issues are brewing, like economic instability, political unrest, global crises, somebody's done something bad and it's about to get in the news, governments usually and very often create some kind of distraction. So remember when the Pentagon released UFO footage in 2020. That conveniently happened during a global pandemic, this chaotic thing that was going on around the entire world that we all suffered through. Number two.
Again, he's just putting pieces together, and you can put all sorts of narratives together. I mean, that's kind of how pessimism and bias and paranoia work. I mean, you can find all sorts of narratives to piece together if you want. I mean, clearly there's many other explanations for why that information came out then.
Using fear as a tool. So fear unites people. So if there is a threat big enough, and I want you to remember, if you're just listening to me right now, I'm sitting on your kitchen counter or something like that, and you're making dinner. I said the word threat with huge quotes around it. If there's a threat big enough, like UFOs, people are...
It kind of reminds me of the threats that Chase talks about on his old website. A person can be hypnotized against their will. The CIA programmers created sexual slaves to create hypnotic assassins, even involving teenage girls. You can achieve full compromise. Designed for use by restricted civilians in the U.S. only. This is a weapon. A picture of a woman who is presumably some sort of killer. Yeah, fear can be used to sell you things. It can be used to get you to believe that someone is an amazing expert of secret, amazing, scary techniques. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, back to this guy.
Are more likely to trust their leaders, give up freedoms, and rally behind whatever solution that they're offered.
Now, I should throw in here, I don't know much about Chase's politics, but I've heard that on the behavior panel, he's seems like a pro-Trump person, and that's not to denigrate him, but just to say, I think there's a skew, or maybe an alignment here with him talking about, this kind of like deep statey threat. Notice he talks about like, I think he talks about this, maybe it was just the commenters that I read, but talking about like the powers that be, which currently, are still in America, still Biden and such. So to be clear, I'm not, I work on depolarization, so I'm not trying to smear, denigrate all Trump, pro-Trump people or all Republicans or anything, but I just think there's a map over here to what Chase is kind of implying, and I haven't, again, I haven't watched this far in the video, but we'll see what else he says.
The same playbook used during the Cold War. This was called the Red Scare for that reason, or post 9/11 with the War on Terror and the Patriot Act. And then number 3.
Right, but those were not like conscious. People really believe those things. I don't really see the analogy if he's implying like this is. I don't see the analogy.
Testing the waters. This goes back to BC years. All 3 of these things go back to the BC years. This is not something that's original. So governments tend to test and gauge how people react. So if we accept UFOs as real and we don't freak out, that means we can kind of escalate the narrative without any pushback. So think of it like kind of a slow drip instead of pouring it all out at one time. And if you want to...
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. You can come up with any kinds of, pessimistic, scary stories that you want. They're testing. I mean, anything we hear about in the news could be somebody testing us for something, some great power testing us. But, what evidence do we have is what it comes down to. I mean, I should also throw in here too, like, again, this video had almost 1.9 million, and people are going crazy on Twitter, sharing it, being like, what a great video Chase has made. This is really educational. I think this is just, really tells you how much people will really embrace things that they want to believe. I think most of the people sharing this are already people who, are really into... we're probably just really into pessimism about the government, pessimism about big plots in general, is really, and there's a lot of those people, apart from any political beliefs, there's a lot of people willing to embrace those theories. I mean, A, it's fun to think about. B, many people genuinely believe there's all sorts of plots going on all over the place. And I don't believe that, and I write about that in my book about why you shouldn't believe that on the left and the right. Okay, I'll keep playing this.
I want to look back at some of these historical parallels. This is not the first time this has happened. There's just a few that come to mind right now. The first is the Gulf of Tonkin. This happened in 63 or 64, 1963 or 64. The United States used extremely questionable reports of attacks on naval ships, which were not true, to justify escalating this Vietnam War. And then in 1962, we had this thing called Operation Northwoods. This is a declassified plan about the U.S. officials staging, quote, fake attacks, completely fake attacks, like blowing up planes with people in them to justify military actions against Cuba. And in the post 9/11, what I would call a fear campaign. So after the attacks, governments push for these just sweeping changes like the Patriot Act, which expanded massive surveillance under the guise of terrorism. So if you just replace...
I don't know about this Northwoods stuff, but I would suggest that when you actually look at the number of largest conspiracies out there, there's very few. I have a free essay about that on my site, americananger.com/post/conspiracy theories, and I go into some of the reasons for that. But long story short, there's just not a lot, and the ones that exist tend to come out. Then you also have to factor in that the modern environment we're in is much harder to get away with stuff. I mean, think about how hard it would be to get away with a plot even involving like 3 people. Like, let's say you did something and you would have to be so afraid of one of those people leaking information, getting greedy, selling the information, just turning against you, their guilt weighing on them, whatever. There's all sorts of reasons why even like the smallest conspiracy can be outed. And now we live in an environment where you can record people. There's evidence everywhere for things people do that you can record them audio wise. You can get all sorts of digital tracking things, video surveillance. It's easier than ever to set up something where if somebody's gets killed, like that information gets sent to somebody else, that kind of thing. Just to say there's all sorts of things at work that make the modern environment harder than ever for biggish conspiracies to succeed. I'd also say too, I don't know why Chase is again throwing in this thing about 9/11. Say what you want about the Patriot Act and stuff, but I think those were legitimate concerns. Even if you thought they overstepped, many people were legitimately afraid, and that's kind of the problem in some of these things is, people have too much fear, but how is that related to a Psy-Op, right? He's just reaching for things to bolster his case, even if they don't make much sense. And I don't know about this Northwoods thing, but knowing Chase and considering I haven't heard of it, it wouldn't surprise me if we looked into that and there wasn't much there.
Terrorism or communism with UFOs, you can start to see a pattern. So what might be happening? What might be happening right here? It might upset you. It might piss you off, but we're going to talk about that in just a second. So keep that in your back pocket for just a second. Number 1 is a normalization phase. So just steadily leaking UFO footage.
I like he uses all this fancy editing and fancy phrases and such. He's very high budget on the videos. You got that going for him.
Holding hearings, using all these terms like UAPs all the time. The government makes the idea of something out there seem reasonable.
Yeah, that's normalization, purposeful normalization, or it's just them transparently talking more about the fact that there are unidentified things out there. Again, yeah, it's good to not reach for things you don't need to reach for without good evidence.
So this keeps people curious, but not panicked. Curious, but not panicked. The second part of this is setting the stage for a big reveal. And I want you to keep that one in mind. So at some point, we might see a more dramatic event, like a giant UFO sighting over a major city, or footage that is just impossible to dismiss.
Yeah, anything's possible, Chase.
And you could think giant holograms, giant drones, or other advanced tech just creating something that you cannot ignore. So number 3 would be a need for a savior. So once the threat feels real enough, governments or even global coalitions could step in as these heroes. They might call for increased defense budgets. Maybe all the governments in this area need to unite into one big government. Maybe a global response team, and I say that with quotes
Yeah, maybe, Chase. Maybe.
around it, to handle this threat. So this could lead to giant power shifts and more control in fewer hands is kind of maybe the goal of that. And this, you could look this up. There was even a plan to stage a fake kind of alien invasion. This is on record on paper that there was a full government plan to make a fake alien invasion. But what could be next?
Any more information about that? I want to hear more about that, and I guess I'll look into it later, since he seems like something you'd reference a little bit more information about. But again, yeah, I mean, wouldn't surprise me if it was just one random government employee spouting off in some random report somewhere. Like, Chase has a habit of doing this too, where he'll exaggerate like the MK Ultra stuff or other stuff to make it sound like all these amazing nefarious things happened, you know. And again, this is what he does, because it boosts his bottom line, because it makes you think like maybe this guy with these vague credentials, who has no Wikipedia page, who nobody knows about apart from podcasts, maybe he really does have these amazing secrets, and I'll pay him tens of thousands of dollars to learn these amazing Psy-Op influence secrets.
What could be down the pipeline from right now? If we follow this theory to the logical next step here, here's what might happen. First would be escalating UFO reports. They expect a lot more sightings, near misses with airplanes, mysterious objects interfering with infrastructure like power.
I'll throw in here too, I haven't seen many people talk about this, but it reminds me of there was the Hudson Valley UFO sightings decades ago, I think, that they learned later involved, once the sightings got started, these other ultralight aircraft people were flying around as a way to basically troll the community, because they realized, you know, it was kind of a fun way, now that everybody was talking about it, to troll people and get people talking. And I kind of wonder if some of these things are, you know, more people are going to start doing these things, kind of like the crop circle thing. I think, you know, you can imagine in New Jersey, if you had a drone, you might be like, I'm going to mess with people and go fly my drone around. Not to say I don't know if that's happening or what extent it's happening, but it wouldn't surprise me if things increase for that reason, because it's just kind of a fun thing people like to do. All right.
Or grids or airports. It's going to feel real and urgent. The next would be a media blitz that would come after that. So mainstream media will amplify the story. They're going to interview pilots. They're going to release grainy videos and have experts explain these things that are maybe defying physics. The goal, potentially, and I say all of this as a potential hypothetical, to make everybody believe this is a huge deal. Next would be a global event, and this could be something absolutely wild, like some kind of coordinated UFO appearance.
Again, I do want to plug Brian Dunning's movie, the UFO movie They Don't Want You to See. I think it's a good rejoinder to a lot of the more gullible or unskeptical narratives, I should say, out there, which I've myself have believed, but some of Brian's writing on it helped me see more nuance and uncertainty in those areas, which I think is good. We can't just go with our temptation to run with the most exciting or most controversial or conspiracy-minded narratives.
Maybe a simulated attack, or even some claim that we've made contact. And it doesn't have to be real. It just has to be believable enough. And of course, then we have a solution. So after the chaos, governments might roll out solutions like new defense initiatives, new military spending, government coalitions, governments kind of coming together, expanded surveillance maybe, and calls for like some international cooperation. All right. So why
some of these more, these to help you see how illogical some of this stuff is, besides the things I said already about how hard it is to keep conspiracy secret. I mean, just think about, is the claim that all these things transfer between, like Trump being president in 2016 and 20, and then like, is he gonna be, are they hiding the information from him when he takes office? It's just like, there's so many pieces that need to add up to people doing this in some sort of conspiratorial way that just, I mean, it's just at a certain point, very quickly it becomes like Occam's razor. Like you're just imagining things that are extremely unlikely, unless you think like so many people are in on this. It's kind of like at a certain point it becomes like the the flat Earth kind of stuff. It's like, how many people do you need to be in on these plots, and why does nobody ever expose it?
Should we care? Even if all this theory sounds way the hell out there, the technologies exist to make all of it plausible. So hologram.
He's good at a little bit of hedging. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can rile up all sorts of conspiratorial fear and paranoia and just throw in an occasional, it could be happening. I'm not saying it is, but let me go on for another 10 minutes about why it, seems like it is, or, very much could be. Good to have your cake and eat it too.
Drones, AI, deep fakes are advanced enough to fool large populations. And historically, going back to the year 1 AD, governments have shown that they're not above manipulating fear to get what they want.
Yeah, governments do stuff, but how often do they get away with big plots? That's really the question. And again, I would posit that that is quite rare.
So now we get to what do we do? What the hell do we do about this? Number one, stay frickin' critical. Do not take everything at face value.
Yes.
Always question why some stories are getting so much attention, and
yes, this is getting a lot of attention.
Most importantly, who benefits from that story?
Who benefits from this story? Yes.
And educate yourself. You need to look into historical precedents, maybe current technology. You could just use ChatGPT for a lot of this, and some government strategies. So the more you know, the harder it is for you to be manipulated. Focus on reality. So of course, this is nothing but conjecture. I'm just sitting here at my house. We've got a bonfire going on outside. We're about to go sit outside for a little while and just enjoy nature around a fire like our ancestors did. And I don't know anything. I don't know anything more than you do.
Okay.
About what's going on. So the sky's the limit for this conjecture, but maybe it's theatrics. But remember that not every light in the sky is some alien. Stay very grounded in what's provable, and know that getting angry at things that are outside your control is stupid.
Yeah, like you maybe don't get angry at this shadowy government that's planning some conspiracy quite yet. People in the comments.
It's just like drinking acid. So here's how to spot a Psy-Op. And I've never said this publicly before, but here is the step-by-step formula that will enable you to spot a psychological operation.
Okay, he's never said it publicly.
Separating manipulation from genuine news is like kind of playing detective. So here's a few steps that will put you...
I'm just going to stop it here. Yeah, it's going on for another 10 minutes. I think we get the idea, and I'll probably just be repeating myself about what a bullshitter this guy is. Also, I wanted to throw in here, too, this was kind of interesting, and he's gotten this guy... He gets millions of views off these podcast hosts that host him completely uncritically. Like there's all these people, and I'll just give you an example here. As this guy, Leon Hendricks, Chase has had 1.7 million views on this video. His description: the U.S. government's brainwashing and interrogation expert, training the intelligence agencies, a neuroscientist, and the world's #1 human behavior expert. Yeah, that all sounds good. It's all bullshit. I mean, he is called the world's #1
human behavior expert by what is it? Gurus, some site, Gurus something, just some low quality site. But my point is, this is how Chase gets attention. All of these various podcasts, it's like a game of telephone. Like, I don't know if Chase tells them to put this in the bio or if he's like implies it. Are they pulling it from other things he said? Because he's much more careful. That's the thing. Chase has all these things on his old website about, like, you know, all the amazing experiences he had, but he slowly removed those from his website over time because he had more attention on him. But it's kind of interesting. All these podcasts just repeat this false information about him. Like, there's no evidence. Again, there's no evidence that he was any sort of brainwashing or interrogation expert for the U.S. government. You won't find that evidence anywhere. He'll never say directly that he was doing that, just like he said it very vaguely in the beginning of this video. So my point is just that he got famous, well known through all these podcasts in the last few years that basically took the information on his site and ran with it and repeated it uncritically, which leads him to get other podcast interviews, which is kind of how a lot of this ecosystem works. I mean, for a lot of these, you know, bullshitters, they rack up things that look impressive. Like, you know, you might that Dr. Phil was trying to make a show with the behavior panel guys and calling Chase Hughes a great expert, and it just shows you, like, there's a snowball effect where, you know, somebody like Dr. Phil's team just sees stuff like this and is like, oh, he must be an expert. Like, he couldn't have all these random podcast interviews and not be, you know, what he says he is, could he? Well, the truth is you can. I mean, if you're willing to just lie about all sorts of things, you can do some amazing things. It's, you know, it is kind of inspirational if you're one of those kind of people. But again, to repeat what Chase was saying, stay skeptical, try to be grounded, enjoy your backyard barbecues, stay skeptical, and be willing to embrace some uncertainty about things we don't know on the information about. Like, you know, for example, maybe in this case, one thing that people were talking about is maybe the military was testing drones and they don't want to talk about it. Maybe they were looking for something with the drones, like maybe there was a nuclear bomb or something, or they got word of a possible nuclear attack and they were sniffing using drones for certain areas, you know, which could explain some of this stuff. Just the point is, you don't know, and it's quite irresponsible the more you drum up kind of fear and paranoia about these things. So again, if you doubt anything I've said in here, if you think I'm full of shit myself, I would just go recommend, if you don't want to watch my videos, I have a summary of my analysis about Chase. And this doesn't even include things that people have sent me since I put this up, like people from Chase's past telling me basically details about all the bullshit that he's been lying about for, you know, decade plus back in the day. Just to say, there's a lot there. And at this point, you know, if you're a Chase fan, I think the burden of proof is on Chase and his buddies at the behavior panel. If they want to show why I'm the unreasonable one, I mean, after all the information I collected on my site, yeah, please, you know, it's the burden of proof at some point is on the people that have been shown to be serial liars and deceivers about all sorts of things, big and small. So yeah, I felt moved to make this video because Chase is racking up the views on this thing, which is just kind of a testament to how the internet is just, it's fucking garbage. Anyway, I'm out. Bye.